Hi, I'm Peter Haddock and I'm here at the MachineMax HQ near London Bridge in the City of London. And I'm joined by Kate Stephen. Kate, you've got a wonderful job here at MachineMax because you're solving the problems and looking into the future as to see what's going on. Tell me a little bit about your role and where MachineMax has come from and why we're here today.
Thanks, Peter. As you said, very exciting role that I have. I'm the head of product and design, and what that really means is I work with our brilliant teams that we have here to understand from our customers and from the industries what the problems are that they're facing, what causes those problems, and then all of the different ways that we can solve them. And when we're thinking about problem solving, we're not just thinking about today, but we're really trying to anticipate where you might encounter problems in the future and what your needs might be and how we can solve for them now. So we're really getting ahead of the game and trying to, of course, do more than our competitors do and anticipate that need. We work a lot with data, and that's really the core of our value. So bringing all of this data together and outputting it in a way that is useful and usable to you, and ultimately reducing the time that it takes from getting data to actually being able to action an improvement or a change.
Well, that's really interesting because, folks, I came across MachineMax at the FutureWorks show and just before the show when you were working with Plantforce Rentals, one of the big players in the market, to set up a virtual site. There was a physical site down in the Stratford-upon-Avon and then beamed into FutureWorks using your technology. And what you were talking about there was real time. Now, real time is where it's at, isn't it, right now? And you've got devices, one's literally down there, you're going to hopefully show me in a moment, that help you get that real-time data and process it. But I'm interested in that. Tell me a little bit of how it works and the device you use.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is our device. Fits within the hand, magnetic, very easy to install. And what this does is through vibrations and various other information, we take GPS as well, we have algorithms that can then predict what your machine is doing in terms of activity specifically for this sensor. And what that allows us to do then is to tell our customers exactly what's happening with their machine in real time, as you say. And real time is so important because, we can look at retrospective data and we can understand what's happened, but what we're really trying to work for at MachineMax is enabling someone to make a decision in the moment to proactively manage that change and to proactively make improvements. So we started off with this sensor, and that was our core at the very beginning 4.5 years ago. Where we've got to today is actually around this concept of being source and device agnostic, data agnostic. So we pull data in from lots of different sources, whether that's third-party sensors, our own sensors, or OEM telematics. But the real differentiator for this is that it provides that real-time versus a cumulative retrospective view of data.
And what's really interesting for me about that, folks, is how you work in the UK as a business. We all see out there, and it's getting even more so, people have different OEM manufacturers' equipment to do different things. And I've even seen people recently that have switched from one OEM to the other just because of availability of equipment. Now that's fundamentally changing the way that the whole industry works. I don't think we've got a big player in this market that has all of one OEM's equipment. I don't think that will ever be the case. So getting data from individual places and trying to piece it all together yourself from looking over here at one system, over there at another system, is just been that blocker for some businesses, hasn't it? And that's why, this whole pulling the data in from different sources whilst recognizing what they are is so important. So you talk about algorithms. Algorithms is digital speak, folks. Break down an algorithm for me. So we've got an excavator and it's a 20-ton excavator, say, and you're saying we're pulling in data and this, that, and using algorithms to say what it's doing. Explain how that works.
So really all it is understanding patterns, and I say all it is, we have a brilliant data science team who work on this, but it's about understanding patterns in behaviour and the data that you're getting. So I mentioned vibrations, I've mentioned GPS, speed, we use voltage as well, and it's understanding then how grouping that data together can give you an inference about something that's happening. So in terms of how we validate that and how we make sure that these patterns are legitimate and real activities or actions or events, is then going out onto site and working with our customers to visually see what's happening and comparing what these patterns in the data are telling us. So we can then label that and say, okay, this pattern means that this event has just happened, and we feed that in and continue to build out our models and our algorithms based on that.
So what you're saying to me, and this is really important because I just thought you were just thinking, right, over here, we reckon it's going to be that. Going onto site, which is what I do all the time, folks, as you know, is imperative to see what's actually going on and what those activities are. So because you've got the vibrations and all this other data, then when you're witnessing something like an excavator dig a trench, you can understand and label that as digging activity, in this simplistic format. When you've got one of the biggest issues that we have in the industry, when a machine is sat there idling and doing nothing, but of course burning fuel and actually having maintenance costs that go with it because the engine's rolling and the hours are still going on that machine, then that's a different thing. And when obviously we're tracking backwards and forwards, there's different vibrations that go with that. So I'm getting it now. So you've got all of this stuff that you put together. That comes in to you here at MachineMax HQ in London Bridge. And how are we working with that data? So we put this magnetic sensor on, but you're also tapping in, like you said, to other OEM data sources. So I just thought it was simply that device that you plug in. But how does that all come together and piece together? And why is that journey of where you've been on from just the singular device to be able to do that? Why is that important?
We know for our customers that tracking your entire fleet is the number one. That's the real outcome here. And if we just provide these sensors, we're to a certain extent excluding a certain portion of customers who already have data. There's not always a need for the real-time data that perhaps we can offer. Maybe that differs by machine type or by stage within the project, or even the advancedness of the way that you think about data. So we wanted to then expand out to make sure that any data that you do have, we bring that in. The challenges that there are of course, this data comes in different formats and you have different data points. So really, you spoke about how, as previously you would go into multiple different platforms or multiple different providers and ask for data or pull data off, and you'd have to bring that all together yourself. Now, what we do is we normalize all of that data, which means, we understand through, again, labeling within our back-end systems, we understand what data points come from each source and how those data points can compare. So even if they're in different metrics or different formats, we can do that comparison for you. Then once we get to the next stage, we can then aggregate all of that data and start to show you different ways of cutting your fleet and what's going on with that. So whether that's by site or geofence or shift or machine type, you've now got this view where you can compare and contrast data rather than having to compare two completely, apples and pears, for example. You're actually comparing data that has gone through that normalization process.
And I think what's really important about that, and I have this as a big subject of mine, folks, what's important is from one site to the next, you have differentials. Yes, you've got the weather, we all know about that in the UK, unfortunately, but we've also got different types of machines. So we might have one 20-ton excavator to another 20-ton excavator of a different type. What we're saying is now we can take the data that's coming from those machines and we can compare, if they're on similar projects, obviously one's in a quarry and one's just doing an odd job around a particular site, it's not relevant, but we can compare and contrast them. We can also support people with understanding how that particular machine is working, can't we? So this comes back to my idling times and comes back to the biggest issue we've got in the industry, as we know, is the skill shortage and how we can help in a positive way to look at how we can help operators improve what they're doing, or how we can look at a site in general and see what that is doing. So How do we find that information from what you're saying? How does it presented to me? Have I got a big printout, or do I see it, on the screen, or what's happening?
So right now today we have a platform so you can log in and you can see that data in a dashboard format. So we give you certain views of your data in graphs, trends over time, understanding those key metrics to you, but also the ability to deep dive into the detail. Now, where you mentioned around operators, what we're very aware of is that it's not just machines on a site, about machines, but actually there's a whole ecosystem that exists. And in order to make those improvements, to improve productivity, to save costs, it's often the operators who are going to be the ones actioning that change. So it's really important to get them into this experience, into this journey. So what we're looking at is how can we link those and how can we make that data more tangible for the operators to really understand the impact of what they're doing. So, actually as an operator, what is my cost of idling every day and how is that changing over time? And as humans, we want to improve, we have that competitive nature, some of us more than others, but it's also about bringing that into the day-to-day life of the operators so that they can understand and they have that visibility in order to then improve.
And I think what's interesting about that, and I've done this conversation with people for quite a long time now, particularly starting in the mining and the quarrying sectors, is team, right? Teamwork makes the dream work, folks, and the team element is really important because what I like about what I've been hearing from the likes of PlantForce and Flannery that I've talked to that use your system is actually sharing that information in an operator community helps people to understand the implications of different activities, but also helps that mentoring that we need from experienced people to new people that are coming into the industry. And again, it also helps to justify the value of upskilling. And for me, the brains in any machine are not the computer, it's not the data, I'm afraid, Kay, it's the operator themselves. And when we get that kind of behaviour that's positive for everyone, then actually we can change outcomes. Now, when I was looking at the future work data on the screen, we saw different things like the CO2 emissions, the fuel burn, the percentages, the averages, the different things. What I'm interested in understanding is, you've said we can aggregate all this, we can do this. If I'm interested in specific things as a customer, can I do that deep dive, or can I just say to you, look, set up a dashboard on this, and I want it not just to be with my site team or me and my head office, but my customer group wants to see that as well. Is that kind of possible, or is it that too complicated?
So, of course, everything is possible, and we are working towards that 100%. So how MachineMax works is that we don't want to build one thing for one customer and then go out and build another thing for another customer. Yeah. We want to make sure that what we're building is actually really useful and scalable across the industry, because really what we're all trying to do is drive that change at an industry level. So we know that there are nuances between customers. We know there are always different needs, maybe different ways of showing the data or different ways of measuring the metrics. So we haven't got the full answer to that yet within the platform. But what we're doing at the moment is going through a process of understanding from our customers what those are. So we're creating a lot of different dashboards outside the platform, working with customers to understand how they're using that data and how much that either is similar or is different to other sites. It could be, we work across construction and mining, so different industries as well, and really understanding before we get into the build of what it is that is really going to impact decision making and that ability to make change in real time. So within the platform at the moment, you can get certain metrics, as you say, and deep dive into what's the consumption of fuel over time by machine type, and really detail in on a specific metric or a KPI, but we're also working to introduce targets, and we know a lot of the time out there'll be a target set by the corporate to say we want to reduce our CO2 by 20%. Yep. So what contributes to that? How do we get to that? How do we even understand what our baseline is to measure that reduction? So these are the things that we're then working towards so that you can track that change over time, and more importantly, understand what is contributing, specifically which machines are contributing to that increase or decrease and the move towards your target. and as part of that, bringing operators along the journey.
What's really interesting about that is I've been doing some work recently with National Highways, and of course we have them as a very big client in the UK marketplace, and what they're talking about is obviously their net zero journey. Now, for me, there is currently no benchmark for the industry as to how we measure what you're talking about there, how we compare like for like, or apples and oranges, or whatever you'd like to call it. I think that is lacking in the industry right now, and I think those standards have to come down the track. So what you're doing there, showing people that data and that information, what's possible, is hopefully, in my book, going to lead to a greater level of understanding and standards set within the industry. I'd like to see that happening, so let me know when that conversation is going to be had. But equally, clients are saying these things. How do we, as an Earthworks PLC in the UK, for example, and globally, give them that information in the right way as well? Because what does today look like? And where is that barrier to 20% reduction? Because if you don't know what you're using right now, which is probably quite honestly, most of the industry can't measure that, then how can you say we've got a 20% reduction? What are the things that you're putting in place to be able to support people that need to or want to do that? And I know you're working with some of the big players that we mentioned already, but that's important, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two sides of it. There's your baseline as an individual company, or as an individual project, a site, and then there's the industry standards and really how you're comparing to that. So if we start off with the industry standards and understanding how am I performing against the industry, we're in a really lucky position where we have a huge amount of data. We've got thousands and thousands of data points coming in every second from all these different sources that then allow us to say we can cut that data in different ways and understand over a period of time at specific points in a project really what is that average right now. And of course that's going to continue to change and flux, hopefully, as all individual organisations improve and push change on the industry. So we really want to be able to provide that industry view of the benchmark. And then if we take it into a specific customer, we completely acknowledge that this is something new to a lot of site managers or to project managers, whatever that role might be, sustainability managers, and they need our help. We have the resource, we have the capability within our teams from a data side, really specialist on that. And with that knowledge and capability, we can then start to, for your specific makeup of the project, so which stage are you at, how many machines do you have, what type of machines, if we can then take all of those data points and say, okay, we had a similar project actually that had this same makeup and this is how this performed. Maybe in the future as well, that can help you then predict, if you're going out for RFPs as well, then, how can you use that historical data to help influence those decisions going forward? But really for us, the core right now is helping you to understand for this specific situation, what's your baseline? So we use data over a period of time and then we start to calculate against that. So that will be the first starting point, and then we'll move out into much wider benchmarks and comparisons at an industry and site level.
Well, that's great to know, and I think what's really interesting now, as we know, again, I'll refer back to that FutureWorks event. Got some videos on that, folks, which is good. But basically, what I'm understanding from that experience is the data is already being used by Plant Force on their projects, and we could see that in that virtual sense. What that's doing is that's allowing them to prove what they're doing, and it's allowing them to share that with their customers. What's interesting for me is that step, and I guess it's this next step we're talking about how to react in real time to real-time data. Now, I'm guessing, you've got your dashboards here and there. I can access it from, we've got mobile devices right next to me and things like that. There will be critical things that people need to know. And one of those is someone stealing my machine, for example. So it pings up and says, hey, someone's stealing the machine. I have a big problem with plant theft. Even bigger problem that's coming around the corner now with red to white diesel. So fuel theft. So we might have an alert that says, hey, I've run out of fuel because someone's stolen it, for example. What is that looking like? What is that sort of next journey looking like as to how people can look at the health of machines, be proactive in that space, and also do things differently?
Yeah, so it is really about that balance of what information do I need right now versus what information is useful for me to know retrospectively to then change in the future and track that change. So we're really focused on that now, that action, and giving you the right insight to take an action. So I mentioned earlier around the reduction from time of collecting data to taking an action. And in order to reduce that, we're working on several really exciting things at the moment. So the first of which is all around notifications and exactly what you need to be notified around. So we've just released a proof of concept around idle notifications, so setting a specific threshold. So this is really focused on some of our customers who really want to zero in on reducing idle, and they set a specific threshold, and they're then communicating with their operators in real time to reduce that. So if there is a problem out there and they see this happening for 5 machines at a single time, then actually that could infer a lot of other information around what's going on in that specific area. We've suddenly had 5 notifications and they're all for these 5 machines that are operating together. Is there a problem? Do we need to send someone out? Really address that straight away and cut the wastage. So we're doing that at the moment with our platform via emails, but actually what we're developing as, again, a proof of concept is a mobile app. So really then having something on you in the field, wherever you are, you're going to get this notification. Being able to set for you, we spoke about how each site has a different need and a different capability. Therefore, it's really important for you to say, what do I need to know in real time? So being able to set that yourself, whether it is idling, fuel theft, movement of machines, it could be around targets, for example. So we're really working on our view is to expand that out, that capability, and make sure that you have that information at the point in time that it is useful.
And one of those great examples that I've heard in the industry is the prime mover's gone down. And we've got a ruck of ADTs that are literally sat there idling away thinking, well, something's not happening in front of me. That message of the machine going down, well, someone's trying to fix it, it's going to be 5 minutes, it's going to be there, but the message, the simple message that could come ping through to me is turn your engine off. We might be 20 minutes here, we might be an hour here, just turn your engine off. Let's stop that idle time. We're going to fix the problem, and off we go. That in itself saves fuel, and fuel is going through the roof at the moment. So it must be a big focus for you. But the other thing that really excites me about all of this is that continuous evolvement, that continuous data change and transfer and information. And also this collective data pool that you are producing every day. And, it doesn't need to be, an individual business or whatever. With that pool of information on the different types of equipment, on the performance of different things, that's actually going to be quite interesting, because I see manufacturers all the time. It's a new machine, it's 20% better here, it's 15% better there, it's got superpower mode and all the rest of it. But when you're pooling data with the same types of machine, you can actually see overall performance of that machine and gauge that against competitor OEM machines as well, can't you? Which does give a kind of benchmark of performance for individual categories and machines. Yes, there is a context for that, but that's where this could all lead, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We're very conscious around the procurement process of machines, whether it's a hire company buying them or whether it's then a contractor renting those machines. These are the types of decisions that they have to make from a cost perspective. So we're also looking at conversations we can have with the OEMs to understand how we can contribute to development of those machines. And, we have a huge amount of data that, we can't necessarily share with them, but we can be a partner for them to understand what the differences are, where they might be falling down and that sort of thing. So 100% it's really important that this data does more than just tell you, when you've been idling for too long, but actually it influences decisions around procurement, around insurance, around maintenance. There's so much potential for where we can take this.
Yeah, and I'm seeing all of this data, folks, is the Earthworks PLC data center here at HQ for MachineMax. And the other thing I want to sort of wrap up with is, I do believe that we've got to make data interesting for the individuals that it relates to. So if I'm an operator, I want to understand what's happening with my machine. I'm not interested in all of this stuff over here and Gumph at the top and whatever else. But I want to understand what training or what investment in me as an individual or what a new machine can do for me, because as an operator, for example, you have a lot of influence on the purchasing of machines. So if I can say to my boss, hey, listen, I've managed to get this idle time down, all of this stuff, I've actually created a really good space here, and guess what, if I could do that in a brand new excavator, then I'll be saving even more money. That justifies investment decisions, but it also puts the operator in the driving seat for data as well, because I do believe that the operator has a huge role to play in this, and I don't believe necessarily that's been communicated as well as it could be, and I think that's important to me. How do you think we can move forward with that so we bring the whole of the industry together?
Yeah, I completely agree. And something that we've been speaking about a lot recently is how do we demystify data?
Yeah.
So how do we make it accessible? And part of that is about being really considered with what data you show. So we could produce, huge spreadsheets of data. We have so much in our systems, but actually, if you're not used to interacting with data, or if you don't have an interest, as you say, as a single operator, you have your machine that you're interested in and not everyone else's, then that's all irrelevant, and it takes time to sift through that information and make a decision. So for us, the focus is on that demystifying and being really, really considered, and making sure then that it is accessible for whoever is using it, and flexing the product that we have. An operator has a different need and a different outcome that they want to drive versus a sustainability manager in the head office. And we need to make sure that our product and our experiences across the different devices, whether it's on a mobile or on your laptop, that flexes to the different needs to make sure that everyone is included, and we're taking into account this whole ecosystem of a site, everyone and everything that operates on that.
That's really interesting, and the final point for me is how you are actually working with OEMs, because I've actually witnessed that very recently with GGR Group, who are actually the distributor for the Farrison electric telehandler. Love an electric telehandler, folks. Love electric machines. You've actually worked with them to make sure their API, which is the way in which they share data, fits in with the MachineMax system. So you're actually enabling that with the OEMs as well, and supporting that transition. That's actually led to the team there selling more units to Flannery, which is a big user as yours as well. How is that working out, and why should OEMs be talking to you and your team now so you can get the development stuff going?
So we have a really unique position where we have exposure to all of these different OEMs. We know the type of data that's available. We've had conversations with them. We understand where they're developing. Farrison is a really great example of where we've done this, and it's really working with them together to make sure that they can expose the right data, that they build their machines and the computers within their machines to expose that data to then feed into systems like ours, and make sure that ultimately the customer, we're both working towards that same goal, has the view of the data that they need, that's important to them to drive change.
And it is change that's happening here at MachineMax HQ in London Bridge, in the City of London, folks. And it's been great to meet you today. What a fantastic discussion. We were only going to have a small chat, folks, but I'm sorry, that's the way it goes when there's a lot to talk about. MachineMax, Kate, it's been great to see you today. Thanks ever so much for sharing your time.
Brilliant. Thanks, Peter.